So, we are now embarking on our next level, which is module 3. As you know, the module 3 is about the interrelationship between corporate strategy, the strategy of a business division. We often call it SBU or strategic business unit. That means a large corporation can be divided into number of key business units, we call strategic business units. So, strategy at the overall corporate level, strategy at the next level at an individual SBU level, and then how that has implication and interaction with the marketing strategy. So, as you can see, marketing strategy is therefore a subset of the SBU strategy, and the SBU strategy is a subset of the corporate strategy. And we will just now look at these interrelationships and how they interplay with each other. So, for example, these important considerations we had, that the depending on a certain discount factor, the net present value of two marketing options, what will be its implication with respect to corporate strategy, or what part of the corporate strategy will actually allow us to choose between option A and option B. These are the kinds of things that we are going to discuss in this particular case. Now, to understand some of these implications, we can easily take up anything that is currently happening. By the way, one of the textbooks that is referred in your course outline is this book, which is Strategic Marketing Problems, Cases and Comments by Roger Kerin and Robert Peterson. This is available in Indian low cost edition from Pearson, and the discussion that we had on those financial considerations for formulating marketing strategy, mainly what we have discussed in the later part of module 1 as well as in module 2. These will be available in Kerin and Peterson's book in chapter 2 as well as chapter 3, and I would request you to also look at this textbook, go through the more detailed descriptions that are given and concepts that have been clarified there, and there are some easy to work out examples and problems given at the end of that chapter number 2, which I think you should engage in. And if you have any problem, then please do get back to me with individual questions. Okay. Module 3, Strategy Decisions and Marketing Implications. I think this first slide is self evident. We have been discussing this continuously. We have had a previous discussion that what is the meaning of market oriented management, and these are the factors that mediate marketing strategic role. So, competitive conditions can enable a company to be successful in the short run without being particularly sensitive to customer desires, or as we saw in that chart that we discussed just in the beginning of today's session, that sometimes in the short run a particular decision may give a immediate payback, but in the longer run that may not be a good option because the growth rate may be higher in the later years. So, these are the considerations that are important inputs that marketing can provide to the overall strategic plan. That sales growth rate in the later years is a piece of knowledge that will come from marketing. Very important, the next two bullets that you see here, one what we call product orientation or production orientation. The product orientation is sometimes today's success may be a trap leading to tomorrow's failure. We have briefly talked about the marketing myopia. For example, people who were doing great developments for say camera with different kinds of films and different kind of film cartridge and different types of lenses and higher and higher range of camera, kind of ignored the emergence of the digital camera. And in the initial stage, companies like say Kodak or companies like Fuji who had major stake in films, camera films, the old style films which needed further chemical processing to produce the prints, they had major investment in production of films. And as a result, they had this product orientation. They were looking at the marketing strategy, that how they could enhance the sale of film, because that was the major revenue source. So, they even gave away the camera in some cases free. So, you had those so called throwaway cameras or single use cameras, which basically was just a roll of film with an attached camera mechanism at a very low cost. And this product orientation made them ignore the rapid emergence of the digital imaging and storage technology and the rapid decline in the semiconductor storage price. So, as a result, even though Fuji or Kodak, they were leaders, they were very successful, within a few years a new entrant, Sony, or a new entrant like Canon, Canon story is a little different, but there were a number of people who came into the market with digital camera and wiped away the a significant part of the film business and created major problem for Kodak or Fuji. So, Kodak, which was almost synonymous with photography, and even though they actually had in their own laboratory good developments, good R&D for digital imaging, the vested interest in the film business made them ignore the aggressiveness that they could deploy with respect to the digital camera. And as a result, we know where a company like Kodak is today. They have to now move into perhaps in the more sophisticated professional photography domain, where the film as opposed to the digital imaging still retains significant value. So, today therefore, they have become in a way a niche or specialty market player as opposed to the mainstream market player. On the other hand, there was a company like Canon, which was also in the camera business, but they did not have this vested interest in the film production, and therefore, they could keep pace with the change in the market, change in the consumer preference, and they were successful earlier with conventional high end camera, the single SLR, a single lens reflex and other different high end camera, and they also remained a significant player and retains their significant market share in the digital camera of today. And of course, they are now introducing like other players in this market, associated products with respect to storage, storage on the web, photo sharing applications, remote applications, and so on and so forth. So, we can take this example of Kodak and understand that the product orientation as opposed to market orientation, as opposed to focusing on the customer and what the customer is preferring currently and responding to that, remains a very important part of marketing strategy. So, product orientation can become a liability. So, as I mentioned right in the beginning, that sometimes the success of a product today can be a trap leading to a failure tomorrow. Production orientation, another kind of related issue, that if you have high investment in certain production facility and you want to maximize, optimize your production capability, that can also lead to. So, we were discussing this case of Kodak. So, the production facility of film became a liability or became a hindrance or kind of forced the company to become sluggish in responding to the new orientation. Sales orientation is kind of again related, and that is that it is possible that you can be blindsided by your sales growth in a particular business, that because as you know that as you approach this segment, the business looks very good, sales is growing, profit is growing, market share appears to be growing, but you may be not aware of some other new development that is taking place, which is going to disrupt your market. So, instead of coasting along and then declining, it may happen a short fall at this stage. So, again sales orientation as opposed to market orientation. So, that means whether it is product orientation, whether it is production orientation, whether it is a sales orientation, what we are talking about here is looking away from your primary orientation, that is a bedrock of the strategic marketing, which is continuous focus on the customer and tracking the change in the customer's choice making process, tracking customers' preferences, tracking the impact of competing products, even adjacent products or even substitution products on the consumer's buying behavior. This is therefore an outside focus that is very important to complement. It is not that you should ignore the product orientation, you should not ignore the sales orientation, you should ignore the growth that you can maximize at this stage, but be equally aware of the changes that are taking place in the marketplace due to competitive activities, due to technological change activities, due to consumer profile changes, and therefore, you must be aware. So, you have to, what we often say, that you must have peripheral vision, look at your side, look at what is happening in the adjacent market, as well as you must have a long range vision and you must have a micro vision on your immediate next quarter, this current year's results and so on. So, all three, peripheral vision, distant vision and focus on the present, all three must be maintained at the same time. Internal focus on your product line growth, internal focus on your production strategy, internal focus on your sales growth in each territory, all of these must also be complemented with the customer choice making pattern. So, marketing role in formulating and implementing strategy, therefore, factors that mediate this is what exactly we have been talking about. At the same time, marketing also has this task of looking at what is happening in the industry in which they operate. So, if you are in the biscuit industry and then you have to define yourself not as a biscuit company, but maybe as a snacks company, maybe as an food company, or maybe as a fast moving consumer goods company, depends on the different context. But within that, one has to look at that what is happening with respect to economic development across other industries in that range, or in the developments. For example, today there is a growing demand for biscuits which are healthier. So, you see people are now becoming more conscious about health, they are more conscious about sugar intake. So, low sugar biscuits, multigrain biscuits, these are now becoming important, and therefore, if you do not have these products in your range and you are continuing with your current strong sales in glucose biscuit, you might be blindsided. So, these are the things that where marketing has a role to bring to the organization the pitfall of the what we call the strategic inertia. So, you may be extremely successful in the glucose biscuit, which is still a very high percentage, constitutes a very high percentage of biscuit sales, but if you ignore the growing trend of healthier options, then you might actually get into trouble. So, strategic inertia of the organization is an area where marketing has to often provide the counter torque, or as we know from the laws of motion that everybody continues in its state of rest or of uniform motion in a straight line. I mean, the concept of inertia, until or unless compelled by an external force to change that direction, and that external force bringing that into the strategy making boardroom or strategy making discussion within the organization, it is a role that marketing has to play. So, the hierarchy of strategies I just introduced to you in the beginning, that the top level over encompassing the is the corporate strategy. A subset of that is the business level strategy. We often also call it the SBU, the strategic business unit, and then below that are the functional strategies, of which marketing is a part. Similarly, there may be functional strategy like manufacturing strategy or supply chain strategy and so on. So, corporate strategy deals with the decisions about the firm, about the organization's scope and resource deployment across the different business units. At this level, we must answer that what business are we in? Do we want to be a conglomerate? For example, like Tata's, they are in steel, they are in financial services, they are in automobile, they are in chemicals, they are in agro business and so on. So, that is a conglomerate strategy. At that stage, Tata Motors and Tata Steel, they all become in a way the strategic business units. Within those are very large companies. So, within them, within Tata Motors, there may be SBUs dealing with passenger vehicles, and there may be another SBU dealing with commercial vehicles, that is trucks and so on. There may be another SBU dealing with off-road vehicles like tractors and so on, if they decide to get into that business. But the corporate level or at the SBU level, we have to always ask these questions, that what is our business? Is this the right business to be in? Is this business growing? Is it a sunrise business or a sunset business? Do we need to complement with some other business, and all of these issues that we take up at this stage. And then of course comes that if there are 4 SBUs, how do we allocate our annual resources, our 5-year development budget. So, there is a maintenance budget. All SBUs are supposed to be self-sufficient, but there is always some impetus needed, some investment needed for growth, and this is where actually that investment fund, that investment budget allocation across different SBUs is something that we do at the corporate strategy level. At the business level strategy, we do the same thing with a little bit of at the focus level of the SBU, and marketing strategy therefore as one of the functional strategies, as a subset of the SBU strategy, the primary focus therefore is on allocation of resources again across the different marketing activities. So, we have discussed yesterday, if you remember, we were looking at Woodland and their foray into the China market, and their focus on strengthening their domestic market share, and their additional effort that they are engaged in today is to introduce adjacent products or related products important to the same core customers. So, they have positioned themselves as tough shoes for rough use, and suitable for adventure, for trekking, for hiking and so on, and therefore, they are also looking at associated products of skin care products when you are out in the open, or different other maybe raincoats, maybe rucksacks and similar other associated products. And now marketing strategy will have to define, will have to decide that how are we going to allocate our developmental budget, our growth budget across these different activities for the thrust into the China market, for strengthening the domestic market position, for bringing in these newer products or associated products. Each one of these activities for its growth will need some fund and some attention. So, how do we allocate that these everything always is, whether money or attention, time, effort, these are all finite, and so you have to allocate a portion depending on what are your priorities. This is the role of the marketing strategy. Okay. So, what is our business? Who are our customers? What kind of value can we provide to this customer? What should be our business over next 1, 3, 5 years? This is what we have to determine, and we will now see that if these are the questions that need to be answered, then what role will marketing play in that. There are some new issues that are coming up now, and those are relating to that besides these growth objectives or financial objectives that can be derived by what is our business, who are our customers, what kind of value we are providing to these customers, how can we enhance that value, what is the current growth rate of the business that we are in, and therefore, are we at a maturing stage, do we need to get into some new business, create some new revenue streams. All these are important questions that need to be answered at the corporate strategy, SBU strategy level, which will result into marketing efforts. But there are some new issues that we are now more concerned with are like, for example, social values. And this can lead to very innovative marketing strategy. I am sure you are watching that many consumer products today are sold, say a feminine care product can actually also give a message that every time you buy this product, a certain percentage of the revenue goes for the care of the girl child, or for female education, or for village schools. In the same way, every time you buy a certain company's writing notebooks, or you buy pens and pencils from a company, a percentage of that revenue goes for supporting village schools or schools for the disadvantaged. So, what was earlier the realm of social marketing, that means marketing for social benefit or social developmental oriented marketing, can now be well integrated into your regular marketing strategy. In the same way, there are now green strategy which will also influence the marketing strategy, the environmental sensitivity. So, if you have a product which has a lower carbon footprint, if you have a product which has a is less polluting, these products can now have additional appeal in the global marketplace. And in some cases, due to regulatory reasons, this might become an essential part of your marketing strategy, and we are going to look into this in greater depth. Few other related but different concepts that we must also introduce about the marketing implication of corporate objective. One is that how marketing managers can help prioritize the alternatives among the strategic possibilities. One of them is this concept of PLC ILC analysis. PLC stands for the product life cycle and ILC stands for industry life cycle. So, if the mobile handset industry is now at a matured stage in a particular Western market, in that market introducing a product, however attractive it may be, at a lower end or at a low feature level will be a wrong decision. Therefore, it is the role of marketing management to constantly track what is happening in the industry in which they are. This issue about peripheral vision, not only in their own industry, but what is happening in the associated industry. If music industry is now getting reconciled to selling not a CD with 15 songs, but they are now strategizing themselves to sell individual songs on per unit basis, then obviously it has implication for the mobile phone industry, who are now combining the music entertainment facility with the mobile handset. So, this is an adjacent, this comes out from marketing's peripheral vision. On the other hand, if there are technological moves that are going to make phones, because of the new development of organic LED, it is becoming feasible to fold phones, and you can actually instead of having a solid block, you can have as thin and as pliable an item like a notebook in your pocket. This development in technology will mean a change, a shift in the product design, and that can change the customer preference, and therefore, that can change the industry itself. As we have seen and we will be discussing later, how products like iPhone have changed the industry definition itself. Okay. On the other hand, some of the organizational constraints can impose some priorities on marketing, and thereby marketing, when they have to decide between option A and option B, will have to look at that particular constraint imposed by the overall organizational situation. So, if your organization needs a higher rate of cash accumulation in one business in which you are, to support the long range growth objectives in another strategic business unit, then the corporate may want your business to provide a higher rate of generation of net present value and higher accumulated cash generation, and therefore, it can actually prefer or create a condition for preference in the marketing strategy for that plan which has a lower leverage. Remember, in an earlier session we discussed that a high leverage plan, which means a high fixed cost plan, versus a low leverage plan, which means a low fixed cost and high variable cost plan. The high fixed cost, low variable cost plan is very sensitive to sales growth or sales fall. It is a riskier plan, and if the organization has this need of certainty of cash flow from your business to support the growth objective of another SBU, it is important therefore to take that into consideration and maybe go for the lower leverage plan. So, this is another aspect. So, now this is something that we have already discussed in terms of the ANSOF matrix, and we will now start developing this the original ANSOF matrix of remember, which is the EPNP, existing product, new product, and existing market, new market. Now, we will further develop on this and just see some of the implications of these considerations. So, obviously, if you are going into you are taking a new product in the existing market, is a kind of a diversification of your product range. If you are taking an existing product into a new market, it is an expansion of your marketing footprint. So, these are there are some regular terminologies you should be now familiar with. So, it is the same matrix which you have now, we have put it in the in a little bit more conventional terminologies, in terms of conventional terminologies. So, when we say current product in current market, then we say our strategy is market penetration, because as we discussed yesterday with respect to Woodland plan, it has a dominant market share in the adventure footwear in India. 75% of its current revenue comes from domestic sales, and therefore, it needs to have a constant focus on increasing this current market share, because the market itself is expanding. So, it has to keep pace with that growth rate. If the market is expanding at a rate of 20% per annum because of more and more younger venture enthusiasts coming into the marketplace, then you would like to have your sales volume should grow by 25%, more than 20%, because your sales growth may be 15%, then as growth it may be fine. But remember that if the market is growing at 20% and if you are growing at 15%, you are actually losing market share. So, increasing market share, increasing the product usage, increase frequency of use, increase quantity used, increase new applications, develop new applications. So, if there is a fairness cream that is now being used once in a day when a person is going out in the sun, then you might like to promote a variant and say this is a fairness cream for overnight use. So, this is a strategy, or we say that brush your teeth once in the morning and once at night. Sometimes these may be based on good scientific principles, sometimes they may be just an incentive from the marketing to the customer, and so sometimes it may be on solid footing on the basis of need, and sometimes it can be triggered by pandering to desire or pandering to some emotion of the customer. At this stage we are not discussing the good or bad of such issues that we will discuss on when we discuss about marketing ethics. But at the moment we are talking about current market, current product activities, we call them market penetration strategy. If you are talking about current product, current market and bringing new product to that market, as we were discussing yesterday or earlier about Woodland bringing associated products like skin care for their adventure enthusiasts, that is a new product coming to the current market. Here we call about market development. Sometimes it can also be done by product line improvement or product line extension. So, we know that many of these comfort shoes or sports shoes, they have a problem with respect to bad odor due to sweating inside. So, you bring out a new variety which is a breathing shoe. So, you change the upper the shoe upper and use a new type of fabric and use a new type of structuring, so that there is a constant air exchange between the inside of the shoe and the outer environment, and thereby you can actually create a variant which provides the same level of comfort for walking, trekking, running, jogging, but at the same time it actually takes care of the sweating feet and prevents bad odor, and it might cost higher, but it will be a product line extension which will bring additional revenue, because there will be some customers who will be ready to pay that extra for that extra feature. And so, in a way, new products for the same market, which is if today Britannia is a leader in the biscuit market and they want to introduce now a healthier choice, a more nutritional choice, and they introduce a multigrain biscuit as opposed to simple wheat based biscuit or a low sugar or sugar free biscuit, then this is a new product for the same market, bringing in additional revenues. So, we call that product development strategy. New market, current product, Woodland going to China, or Britannia making a deeper thrust into the rural market with different packaging, smaller packaging, or Parle G, which is in Parle glucose biscuit, now introducing a very high end chocolate chip variant, catering to the luxury end of the market. These are all taking current products to the new market. So, earlier Parle's consideration were at the lower end, the mass end of the market. Now they can come into the cookie end, high end, luxury end of the market. It could also mean going into a new geography, that is Woodland going to China, that also can be considered in this current product to new market. And finally, we have of course new market to new product. This is the diversification strategy. Now, this new market to new product to new market, this diversification can be done vertically upwards. That means you can add more value and you can now get into a higher systemic level. So, like if you are now offering say breakfast cereal, and now you can move upwards and you can provide a whole range of other breakfast products, and so this is and as well as you can now come up with ready to cook food for lunch or for dinner usage. So, in this case what is happening is you are actually taking your current market position and you are exploring opportunities which are going. So, from breakfast you can actually now try to get a share of the food packaged food business for lunch or dinner. At the same time you can get into diversify downwards, and therefore, you can actually either get into smaller packaged, smaller units, you can get into ingredients. In case of breakfast cereal, that is not an applicable, but there are other businesses where from the current level of packaging you can provide a component level option. So, diversification therefore can go vertically upwards, it can go sidewise, and it can be a completely new product for a new market. For example, we know HUL as a fast moving consumer goods company. So, they make cosmetic products, they make personal care, personal hygiene, shampoo, soap, toothpaste, and all these types of products. But they have now also introduced successfully a water filter which does not need electricity and is at a very competitive price. It can offer clean drinking water to the mass market. As you can see, it actually poses a number of marketing challenges, and I would like you to write a short analysis that therefore, what are the strategic challenges to HUL in marketing this new water filter range. There are issues that you have to look at using all those P's of marketing. That means, here is a new product, but who is the purchaser, where will one buy this product, will somebody buy this product from the same place where they buy their toothpaste, or is the distributor who is now your trusted partner for marketing your soap and detergent products, will they be interested to market your water filter? Or if you are taking it to a new market channel, where household or consumer durables are sold, then how will they consider your brand, because they are not as familiar with your brand. They are familiar with the traditional brands who make refrigerators or pressure cookers or microwave ovens or washing machines and so on. So, how are you going to therefore develop your strategy to take this interesting product, which can be significant revenue generator in this new product in the new market category. So, this is not a diversification in the related business, this is diversification into unrelated business. Should they get into it? If so, how? What should be the steps? This is an exercise that you must engage in before we get to our next discussion. So, I will expect your self initiative in developing this mini strategic plan for the water filter range from HUL, an interesting product offering interesting challenges in terms of the marketing mix and the current market situation of HUL. Thank you.